Passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria, the podcast where we are focused on providing strategy, education, and consulting to the incredible and growing franchise community. Welcome, everyone. Josh Brown here. Hope everyone is doing fan-freaking-tastic.
Coming up in this episode, Josh dives into one of our favorite topics here at Franchise Euphoria, systems. Systems are key to a successful business, and Josh will teach you how to create systems that actually work. You'll have to wait for that, though, because up first, Josh introduces a unique franchise opportunity, the food truck. Intrigued? You should be. The food truck industry is exploding in popularity and could be the perfect franchise opportunity for you.
Today, we are going to talk about how to franchise your food truck. Food trucks have become very, very popular. I know several operators of food trucks, and it's a fascinating business. It's really kind of interesting, the whole food truck craze. And I was thinking about it as I was contemplating this episode, and as I've said many times, really every business has the potential to be franchisable if it's got a simple process that's repeatable and profitable. And the thing with food trucks is that there are some food trucks that are starting to now go through the franchising model. And the thing about it is, with a food truck, I mean, people love the accessibility of it, right? I mean, you'd love to be able to hop out of your office, go to a food truck, stand in line for a couple minutes. You get quick service. A lot of times they have unique foods. I know there's one here that all they sell is bacon related items, which is pretty funny. But gosh, who doesn't love bacon? Usually they're reasonably priced. They have focused and smaller menus, and a lot of them are just downright delicious. And so they're able in these small confined spaces to really deliver delicious food. The theme behind this podcast today is, how do you take your food truck and now turn it into a franchise? I mentioned briefly a few moments ago about the companies that are now testing that out by having people buy food trucks as sort of a mobile unit to a larger franchise system. Well, I really want to focus on 5 steps that you must think about and you must take if you're really going to turn your food truck into a franchise. The first one is, you must be cognizant and understand the business structure. I know a lot of people who start businesses and a lot of people who are bootstrapping businesses, whether it's a food truck or any other kind of business, they don't really pay attention to the structure of their business. And when you're now thinking about multiplying the number of locations or multiplying the units, it becomes very, very important to take a look at your corporate structure and figure out, is your business set up the right way? Is it smart to now go back and maybe create a holding company and create a separate company if you want to have some corporate locations mixed in with some franchise locations? Depending on the situation, you just need to be very, very intentional and clear on where you think the business is going and how the business structure is set up. And obviously, to do that, you need to go to a professional, to an attorney, to accountants and so forth, to make sure from a tax perspective and from a liability perspective that your structure is set up the right way. Number 2 is your intellectual property. And most important is your trademark and service marks. when you have a food truck, you have a certain identity, whether it's a grilled cheese truck, whether it's an Indian truck, whether it's a bacon food truck. Ideally, you're going to have a logo. You're going to have an identity that's associated with your food truck. You need to make sure that that's protected, and you need to make sure that that is registered the right way, especially when you franchise. You have to understand that one of the main components that you are passing on to a franchisee when you franchise your business is their ability to now use your mark, your trademark, your logo, your brand. You must make sure that that is protected. Number 3, the franchise disclosure documents and franchise agreements. Just because you're taking a food truck and turning it into a franchise, in the eyes of the law, that's like any other franchise and any other type of business that you turn into a franchise. You must put together a franchise disclosure document, and you must put together accompanying franchise agreements. Now, the franchise disclosure document has mandated 23 federally required items that are in the agreement. Essentially, it's a history of your business, a history of the owners, speaks a lot to your systems and your processes and what the franchisee is ultimately going to get. And there's a host of other things and other information in there, but you must make sure that you've got a good franchise disclosure document and you've got a good franchise agreement to go along with it. And the thing about it is that a lot of people don't think about is that there's not just one way to franchise. There's multiple ways to franchise. As an example, a lot of people, when they turn their business into a franchise, they think to themselves, how am I going to expand this? Do I want to expand this individual store by individual store? Well, that's an option. Or what a lot of people look at is what's known as sort of a master franchise scenario, where you find somebody within another location, that maybe it's another state, and they become a franchisee, but they become a master franchisee where now they're in charge of going out and finding other franchisees for the various territories that are open. There's area development agreements. There's all sorts of ways in which you can franchise. But the important point here is that you really need to figure that out on the front end of what you're doing. And so you need to know and know what your options are before and during the process of franchising your food truck. Number 4, you really, really need to take all that great information that's up in your head and get it down into an operations manual and have a marketing plan, which is usually included in an operations manual. So, in working with a lot of entrepreneurs, the classic scenario, and it seems to play itself out across the board, is that, entrepreneurs have everything up in their head. Well, if you want to franchise your business, you need to get all that down on paper, because you need to get your system, your process, how you do things down on paper so other people can follow your system. They can't follow it if they can't see it, if they can't read it. Okay. And one of the interesting things that happens, at least with the businesses I've worked with in helping them through this process, is that you can really streamline your processes much, much more when you get them out of your head and onto paper. Because when you can see them written out, you can have a much better idea of, ooh, wait, maybe I can cut this out of the process, or why am I doing this? And it's a great exercise for the entrepreneur owner to go through, and it's a must before you franchise. So you must create the operations manual, the marketing plan for how the franchise will operate. And then number 5, you must understand the registrations, filings, food permits, or any kind of certificates that you're going to need to move forward with the franchise. When you're dealing with when you're dealing with a food truck business, you're definitely dealing with a business where you're going to need a permit. I mean, and I would venture to say in almost every city or state, you're going to have to go through the process of getting the permits that are necessary. Now, a lot of times the states will have state permits and the cities and counties will have separate permits as well. So you need to be sure that you find out what kind of permits are associated and what kind of process you have to go through to get the permit so that you can operate legally within the cities and states that you want to operate. In terms of registrations, there's 15 states in the U.S. that have franchise statutes in addition to the federal laws that regulate them. There's other states that have business opportunity laws, which are very similar to franchise statutes. And then there's other states that don't necessarily have franchise statutes, but they have exemption statutes that you have to follow to make sure that you are exempt from certain filings. I tell you all this because that's just part of the process of turning your food truck into a franchise. Is you must make sure that you are registered properly and following the various laws within each and every state that you're operating. So really, there's a lot that goes into each of these 5 steps. But on this episode, I just really wanted to hone in on, especially in the food truck business, the 5 things that you really need to be cognizant of if you're thinking about turning your food truck into a franchise. And as a quick recap, number 1, what's your business structure? You need to sort through all that. Number 2, your intellectual property and trademark issues and registrations. Number 3, the creation of the franchise disclosure document and the accompanying franchise documents. Number 4, your operations manual, your marketing plan, and your business plan in general. And number 5, your registrations, your filings, your certificates for operation, and your food permits. Really encaptured in all of those 5 steps is everything that you will really need to know. Now, there's a breakdown of each one of those I'm not going to go into on this episode, but certainly, the process I take businesses through is a component of those 5 steps, but broken down even further.
Food trucks, like any other business, need a strong foundation. Great systems are a key to this. Up next, Josh gives 5 tips on creating systems that actually work.
How do you create systems for your business that actually work? I often talk to people about the franchise process, spend a lot of time talking with entrepreneurs and helping them work through whether or not they want to expand with an actual franchise model or just with a franchise-like model. As we all know, having systems in your business not only makes you more efficient, but ultimately makes you more profitable and forces you as an entrepreneur to really hone in on the core competencies of your business. And when you are crystal clear about your core competencies, you are in the best position possible to capitalize on those competencies and make as much profit as you possibly can for that particular business. So, how do you create systems that actually work for your business? Well, obviously, it's easy to talk about it. It's another thing to actually do it. But one of the things I want to focus on today are 5 key questions that you should be asking yourself as an entrepreneur, that as you answer these, it will help you figure out if you are on the right track to creating systems that actually work and will in fact help you along that road. So the first question is, what is your business? I mean, what is it that you do? You need to be able to describe to somebody who asks you off the street, at a cocktail party, whatever the case may be, what is it that you actually do? And part of understanding that is getting crystal clear on what it is you don't do. So often when we converse with one another, a great way to convey what you do is through telling somebody what you don't do. I mean, with myself, with my law practice, as they know that I do franchise law and I work with entrepreneurs. Well, I'm not the person who's going to deal with a criminal matter. And I'm not going to be dealing with a whole lot of other legal issues because I've chosen a particular focus so that it's easy to identify what it is that I do. And a lot of businesses, they don't have that because maybe they're more generalized. Well, the more generalized you are, the more important it's going to be to get crystal clear on what it is you actually don't do so that you can focus the customer or the potential customer in on what it is that you do. Because if you do a whole host of different things, I mean, it's not going to resonate with somebody when you start listing off all they care about is how you can help them. So one of the things that's going to help you really create systems that actually work for your business is if you get crystal clear on what your business actually is. Number two, what's your benefit? And that may sound like a strange question, but every single person that asks, tell me about your business, or that says, oh, what is it that you're doing? What they're really asking is this person I'm talking to, can they benefit me in any way? That's all they're really asking. They're doing it with a social norm that is, oh, so tell me about yourself. Tell me about your business. All they really care about is if you can help them in some form or fashion, whether you can help them with a direct need that they have, or maybe they have a business that they're looking to see if you're a good fit for. But the idea is, what is your benefit? So as you're continuing to build your business or start your business, you really need to think about that aspect first. You need to put yourself in your customer's shoes and say, at the end of the day, whether I'm selling a widget, whether I'm selling a service, whether I'm selling both, what is it that is the ultimate benefit to my end client, to my end customer? Because that's going to be what you need to lead with. That's going to be the most important thing. And it's going to help you frame your business in a way so that you can create a system that actually leads to the benefit that you hope to achieve. Number three, what is your value? So value can be discussed in many ways. Okay. So, there's your own value of what you believe your services are worth. There's the value of what your clients believe the services are worth. And then there's an overall value to the entire relationship, because in order for it to be a good situation for you and your customer, there needs to be a win-win component to it. So in other words, if your potential client values your services a lot lower than you do, you're never going to be profitable. You're never going to be happy just dropping your prices down to that value. You have to get to that comfortable level and really think ahead of time as to what your value proposition is for the business that you're doing. What's the value of the service? What's the value of the product? Now, that's closely related to what the end benefit is, but it ties into the monetary component of it, that at the end of the day, you're asking somebody to exchange their money for something that they need to value at the same level that you do. Now, what you hope ultimately for is that the value that you provide through your service or through your product well exceeds the value that your customer thinks in their own head. Now, that's a great transaction. When somebody believes they spent less than they actually would have, boy, that's a great value proposition, especially if it's profitable for you at that margin. So you really need to understand and to think about what it is your value is and make sure that that's aligned with your customer's value. When you do that, you're able to create a system that can actually be profitable. Because if you're creating a system based off of two mismatched value systems, you're going to have a really difficult time being profitable. Number four, you need to ask yourself, who is your client and customer? Who is this target market that you're trying to reach? I mean, I know we hear this over and over again. Who's your avatar? You need to know their thoughts, their feelings. You need to get inside their head. You do. You need to understand your client and customer. Now, part of that is, as an entrepreneur, the best and most successful ones have a deep-seating care for what they're doing. They have a desire to really not only make money and do the best that they can, but they really want to do well by their customers. Well, the only way you can truly do well by your customers and your clients is to really understand them. You need to understand their perspectives. You need to understand what they like to do. You need to understand in a crystal clear fashion why they're coming to you, why they care to hire you, what their pain points are, what their needs are, what they enjoy to do, what they don't enjoy to do. I mean, you really need to do a deep dive into your customer target market and really have a crystal clear idea of what they do. That is, when you do that, that is perhaps the most important thing that you can do so that you can create a system that actually works. I mean, I've seen it time and time again. And even in my own business, I mean, when you try to set up a system for maybe it's a package that you're offering, or maybe it's a product, or some other kinds of service, you really have it. Once you understand where your customer's coming from, boy, is it a lot easier to make that package worthwhile, to make sure that you have that value add in that package. So get a crystal clear idea of who your client is, who your customer is, and it will be much easier for you to create a system that actually works. Number 5, and this is sort of it's sort of an interesting question. You should be asking yourself, if your business did not exist, would you be missed? And I think so often people have a self-inflated assessment of really how much value they bring to the table. And I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody a lot smarter than me said this and said, if your business did not exist, would you be missed? Now, isn't that the ultimate test? Isn't that the ultimate question? I mean, isn't that the ultimate way to really figure out if you have a differentiating point of value? You know, if you close your doors tomorrow, or you were gone tomorrow, would your clients just move on to the next person, to the next business? Or would they long for what you bring to the table? Would they long for that experience? Would they long for that service, for that product? I mean, what is it about you that would make you be missed? Many of you may not have an answer to that, but you need to find one. If you don't have a reason to be missed, you're gonna fall into the category eventually, if you're not already there, of a commodity. And what do we know about commodities? We know that prices are driven down through commodity type services and products. So you do not want to be in that category. If you don't have it right now, you need to really take time, think about, talk with people about what is it that is special about what you do that you would be missed. If you figure that out, boy, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to create a system for your business that actually works. So let me just do a quick recap here. Ask yourself, what is your business? What is your benefit? What is your value proposition? Who is your actual client, customer, target market? And finally, if your business did not exist, would you be missed? Hopefully this was helpful for you today. If you are in the market for a franchise, I would highly encourage you to check out my free ebook, which is What to Know Before You Buy a Franchise. You can head over to my website at that's INDY franchiselaw.com and download it there for free. And let me know what you think. If you're enjoying this podcast, if you're enjoying the value that you're getting from this podcast, I'd also invite you to go to iTunes and provide me with a rating and review. It always helps for visibility on the podcast. So thank you so much for your support, and hope this episode was helpful to you.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, Nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.